This project is made possible by support from the National Endowment for the Arts, the Missouri Arts Council, and the Kansas City Art Institute.
Welcome to the Mother Ann podcast, where women who are both artists and mothers discuss their diverse experiences as creators and caregivers. I'm Eleanor Lynn Midyett, project manager and co-curator of the Mother Ann Project and assistant professor of liberal arts at the Kansas City Art Institute. I'm also the mother of 4 sons. Each episode features discussions with artists and other individuals involved in the Mother Ann exhibition, which runs from September 5th to November 21st, 2025 at the Leedy-Voulkos Art Center in Kansas City, Missouri. The exhibit and the podcast disrupt preconceived notions that parenthood diminishes one's artistic practice and celebrate motherhood as a source of expansive creative potential.
That's the problem with social media, I think, too, and these screens that we have is that people want to be perfect. People want to build this perfect life. You know, as a mother, I think it's important to teach your kids that perfection is a myth. You know, it doesn't exist. And if they strive for perfection, they're going to be disappointed their entire life.
In this episode, I speak with artist mother Adrienne Maples.
I'm Adrienne Maples. I'm a professional photographer. I've had my own business for the last 20 years. I went to the Savannah College of Art and Design, so actually studied photography on film. My daughter says don't tell people that because it makes me sound like a dinosaur. But film really wasn't that long ago, and that's kind of how I identify as a storyteller, filmmaker, artist, mother.
Could you introduce us to your daughter and who she is and what stage of parenting you're in?
So I have a 14-year-old daughter. Her name is Emmeline. She's my only one and done. And she, gosh, I mean, what do I even say about her? She's a great kid. I feel really, really lucky. A little story I'll tell you about Emmeline is that, so she's 14. She'll be starting high school in the fall, which is terrifying as a mother. But she recently told me that she was so proud to not be on social media. And that's something that I'm passionate about. We'll probably talk about that more. But, to have a 14-year-old daughter come to you and tell you that she is proud that she's not on social media, I thought, gosh, I'm doing something right.
Can you talk a little bit about that, like what your policy is as a parent with social media and devices, that kind of thing?
So this is something that I am incredibly passionate about. I think that because I learned photography on film and I've lived through the evolution from photography to now digital and social media, I think it gives me a unique perspective. And since my daughter was little, she's in a school district where they have the one-to-one initiative, where in elementary school they give all of the kids iPads. And from the moment this happened, I thought, I don't like this. And I really had to dig deep and identify what all of my problems were with this. And so over the years, I'm actually with a group of parents that we fought the school district to put boundaries around these devices because they were handing them out to children like hotcakes. And there's no digital citizenship class. So I took that on myself to do a lot of research and kind of it really fell in with photography because of how I see the world, and I know it's not real. When I create a photograph, it's somewhat real, but not 100%. I felt that it was really important to teach my daughter from the time she was small that images aren't real. You need to look at a photo and then ask yourself, what's outside of that photo? What is that photographer choosing to show us? Social media, and I could go on a tirade about the problems with social media, but especially with children. Social media is this very carefully curated version of your life that you want the outside world to see. And I think that is incredibly dangerous to developing minds. You know, these kids are looking at other people's lives and thinking that they want to be that. And I know that if I, as a grown woman, have trouble disparaging between what's real on social media and what's not, that what does this say to our children? So I just had a policy really early on that my kid doesn't need to be on social media. I don't know how long I'll be able to hold on to this. I'm hoping till at least 16. Right now, again, she says she's proud to not be on social media. She sees the problems that it causes with her friends and how they're addicted to their screens. This is something that I taught her from the time she was little, but, when they become teenagers, they don't listen to you anymore. So when I hear her say some of these things that, I believe are facts, that phones are addictive, that social media is addictive, that while you're scrolling on social media, you're unintentionally comparing yourself and devaluing yourself without even knowing it. Something else I'm really passionate about is teaching kids and my daughter the difference between a selfie and self-portraits and artisanship and, a snapshot.
So it seems like there's this skepticism between appearance versus reality, but in your practice, there is this creation of a world that is magical, and has a little bit of fantasy in it and play. So how does that relate then to that healthy line between appearance versus reality?
My brother used to tell me that I saw the world through rose-colored glasses growing up. And I didn't really understand what that meant as a child, but as I got older, I understood that that's how I see the world. It's what I want to create in my photographs. I want to take pretty pictures. I want to make things pretty with my camera, even when everything around me is ugly. It took me a long time to be okay with using Photoshop and altering my images. Because of this philosophy that I have, that I know images aren't 100% real, for a really long time, I felt that it was important that the photos I shot were as I saw them. And it was my job to use my camera and the tools that I had learned as a photographer to create something. A few years ago, I know I had an epiphany, I guess, and I don't remember the exact moment, but I realized that I could use technology to my advantage. I realized that Photoshop is a tool, just like my camera is a tool, just like AI is a tool. And how do we use this effectively, appropriately, and how do we blend it into our practice as artists, right? AI is the newest ethical quandary. So for me, I thought, well, I learned on film. I like to shoot what I see in my camera, but then I was manipulating it in the darkroom or using Photoshop to burn and dodge like I once did in the darkroom. My epiphany was I could take a photograph, but I could take multiple frames and then blend them together in Photoshop. So I still wasn't lying per se. And I think that's really important to me. I don't want my images to lie. I want them to be magic. But trying to kind of find that bridge into how can I use this as a tool to make my work stronger, but still kind of, when you see some of my photographs where there are flying pages around in the image, you know that those pages aren't necessarily flying around, but they are real. They're real in the photograph. Maybe they're hanging from the ceiling and I've photoshopped the strings out of them. Or I have a photograph of a little girl in the snow, and you see all the snow and then her expression. Well, to photograph a child in the snow is not as easy as it may sound or as it may look in my photograph. So taking multiple photographs, capturing the snow and the scene, but then shooting to get the girl's expression the way I wanted, and then plugging her into my scene so that it's still authentic but surreal.
Yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong. So it's about having this genuine core grounded in reality, but then finding the magic in that reality through your art and through the tools that you have available at your disposal.
I like that. Let's go with that. Yeah, I think probably. As artists, we create, and sometimes we don't know what is really driving us. And you have to take a step back and go, okay, well, I know that I'm passionate about this. I know that I created this, but let me kind of back up, and what are the elements that brought me to creating this? And I think what you said is probably spot on.
Yeah. So just to circle back to the parenting piece, then the concern is then when young people use social media and take selfies, that kind of thing, and they post their images online, that sometimes they don't know where that line is between fantasy and reality, or they don't have control over their image anymore. And so really is about kind of teaching them how to have agency in using social media then, and that comes with maturity.
Yeah, I mean, are we ever mature enough to be on social media? It's a paradox, this world that we live in. Even in my own practices using social media, I have a strict set of guidelines for when I get online, what I'm supposed to do, how long I'm supposed to be on there, and when I'm supposed to get off, so that I don't fall into that pitfall of comparing myself and feeling bad about myself. I wish that I would say that I could stick to my rules all the time, but it's social media. It's addictive by nature. The algorithms snatch us in, and next thing I know, I'm watching cat videos at 2 a.m. when my phone is not supposed to be in my bed with me at 2 a.m. So I'm aware of all these things. I try to teach my daughter where these boundaries are. And I try to teach all of her friends, too. It's something that we talk about a lot. When they come to my house, they're supposed to put their phone on the charging station that we have. I don't want my kid and her friends on their phones when they're hanging out together. Their time together is their time together as children, not in exploring the online world that is social media. When we talk about posting images online, the selfie component here, this is incredibly detrimental to young girls. We have seen an increase in suicide among boys. We've seen an increase in self-harm among girls. They're posting images of themselves online because that's what all their friends do, but they're filtered, they're edited with Facetune. So these little girls are looking at photos of other girls that aren't real. They're not real. But then they're comparing themselves. So when I think about photography, and everybody's a photographer now. Everybody has a phone in their pocket. All these kids are photographers. I teach photography actually to young people, and one of the things I teach, they don't know it, but I'm kind of like indoctrinating them into this idea that social media isn't real. Communicate with your friends in person. Connect with them in real life. Don't have this disconnection that the phone creates, because that is going to make you a healthier person. And I find that this all kind of leads into photography and the lies that photography tells, and how young people who haven't gone through this exploration that I have, where, I shot on film and had to produce my images in the dark room, and then moving on to a digital camera and the poor quality that was in the beginning, and then having these cell phones that, the cell phone can do all of these things that the editing and the Instagram filters and, these things they're not authentic. Even though my images are fantastic and magical, I think that when you look at them, they're fantastical and magical.
Where do you find that magic? Like when you're working, so you have a thriving photography business and then you have this artistic practice, right? So when you are working with a client, for example, where do you try to bring out that magic then?
I choose to show on my website the images that I'm proud of and the images that I want to create. But the truth is, because I work for myself and I'm a single mom raising a child, that I have to take assignments that maybe aren't magical. I do headshots for corporations. Those are not exactly magical. I think that, reason a lot of companies hire me over and over again is that I'm fun to work with. And my job is to bring personality out in people and to make them comfortable when I have a camera in their face. And I know that I'm uniquely suited to work with people because of this energy and fun that I bring when I'm working. So even with headshots, even though it's not necessarily magical, I can make it fun. I have a client that actually reached out to me recently. She wants to do this kind of Norman Rockwell-inspired photograph of her family that is, it'll be very formal. Everyone's in formal attire, but it's crazy. There's chaos around them. And, when I had this first conversation with her, she brought the idea to me, and I said, oh, I know how I would do this. It's not going to be photographed in one frame. We're going to have to photograph it in multiple frames because in order to get this kind of perfect but not perfect shot, it will be we kind of set up for our scene and then we stage every single portion of it. So, it's interesting. Once we put this together, it will look very organic and in the moment, but it will be very staged.
It's sort of like parenting, too. I feel like, everybody always looks at the final product and says, oh, you're a successful mom, or, oh, your family is really successful.
But it's messy.
It is messy, and the hard work that goes into it. So where do you see the bridge between the magical in your own studio practice and then the magical aspect of parenting?
Well, now that she's older, there's less magic. There definitely feels like there's less magic. But, there's this beauty in the process. So, I just was kind of talking about how when you take a photograph, it's not the final version of it. There's this process that goes into it. And practicing creativity without expectation is really the cure to a lot of mental health problems. I don't know that any parent or any mother thinks that they're doing it right. I think that we're constantly judging ourselves and constantly hard on ourselves. I know that I am. I think all the time I'm screwing up as a mom. I just hope I'm not screwing up in the same ways that my mom screwed up. And my mom's great. But, when you look back on your childhood, you think, oh, wow, she didn't have it all together either. When my daughter was small, and her father was never really around, but at about 5, he was completely absent from her life. And I felt like there needed to be a distraction, not just for her, but also for me. And I like to make magic with my camera, and she's small, and kids will believe anything. So I don't even know where I got the idea, but I started making magic for her. And what I mean by that is I would take little tiny toys and I would hide them on my person. And spontaneously, just for, be random, she'd do something really great that I was proud of, and I would, pull out my hand and say, pick a hand, and then there would be a tiny toy in it. And recently we were kind of talking about what things she remembered when she was a child. And one of the first things she said to me was, Mom, I remember when I was little that I thought you were magic. I wish that she still thought I was magic. I felt it was really important for her childhood. It's like no matter what goes on, we all have struggles as parents. You can't compare yourself to the person next to you because you never know what's going on behind the scenes. But I didn't want my child to think anything was wrong with our family. So I tried to teach her that all families are different. Some families have 2 mommies. Some families have just a grandma. Some have just a dad. Some have just a mom. All families look different, but the love is still the same. And there can be magic no matter what your family looks like. So we'd also do creativity is really important to me, in the act of creating and the process of creating is important. So I would just get out art supplies and put them all out on the floor and let her do whatever she wanted when she was little. And they get to a certain age and they become aware of wanting something to be perfect, which that's kind of my struggle now with my daughter. Is she's a very talented artist. She likes to draw and create characters. And, it's one of those things as a mom, when you start to see your child bloom into their own person and find their own creativity, my art is kind of like surreal realism. Hers is completely cartoon, anime. She doesn't like realistic stuff at all. But the characters that she creates are really creative. And the only problem now is that she's aware of wanting something to be perfect, and she'll sit over there and she'll draw, and then she'll crumple up a piece of paper and throw it, and she'll get really angry, and I have to go, hey, honey, this is supposed to be fun. If it's not fun, you need to stop and take a break and then come back to it. And sometimes that works.
Well, there's your magic, though. It's sort of like the inheritance of magic. Before, she thought you were the magic, and now she's creating her own magic. So
That's true.
That's super cool, I think. When you create for yourself, then, for your own studio, your own artistic practice, what are your goals in that, and how is that different than for when you work with a client then?
There are some images that I've started to create that I'm like on the edge of this project. I don't know where it's going to go, but it's kind of everything that we've been talking about. This idea of magic in childhood and creating that in an image. So a lot of it is, I think about a story like Alice in Wonderland. And that is kind of the beginning of my process. Like, okay, Alice in Wonderland, what do I think about that? Obviously magic and this idea of a dream within a dream. And then that kind of steers me into this, what am I going to create and what elements do I put in it? So I'll find kids that are friends with my daughter or clients who I've worked with for years and love my creative stuff.
So Emmeline is always actively sort of this inspiration for your creative
process.
Oh,
definitely. I mean, I don't think there's a mother out there that would say their child doesn't inspire them. So, and I have one piece that I created recently. I don't have a name for it, but it's a photograph of this young girl, and she's surrounded by all these flying pages, and she's looking at a book, and kind of it started with this thought of, kids don't read books anymore, and we're on screens all the time, and wouldn't it be cool to have this magical feeling photograph where this girl is looking in this book, and there are these pages flying out around her, and I start with this idea, I kind of storyboard it out, and then when I start shooting, I feel like it takes on a life of its own. I know there's some artists that start with an idea and it completely manifests into exactly what they started with, but my work is not that way.
So leaning into the unexpected then.
Yeah, I think that if I hold on to this idea and it being perfect, well, anytime I've done that, it does not turn out well, and I stop and I'm angry just like my daughter. So, as I've gotten older and created more, I really try to practice creativity without expectation, because I think my work is a lot better that way. I think I'm healthier that way, and I'm not so hard on myself if I do that.
So that really goes in with the ethics of mothering, teaching your daughter not to have this expectation of perfection, but then also as an artist, then leaning into the unexpected and not always having everything mapped out and perfect.
It's interesting because anytime you have these conversations with people, it builds on your own artistic practice, right? So, after this, I'll probably go home and create something. You mentioned the perfection. I think that's something that maybe is rooted in my work as well, that it's not perfect. Now, the final image maybe is perfect, although I look at it 5 years later and I'm like, oh, that's not perfect. I could do something different in there. But that's the problem with social media, I think, too, and these screens that we have is that people want to be perfect. People want to build this perfect life that they think, and what is perfect? What is a perfect life? That's different to everybody. And why do we hold on to that? Why do we, as a mother, I think it's important to teach your kids that perfection is a myth. It doesn't exist. And if they strive for perfection, they're going to be disappointed their entire life. So why put that kind of pressure on yourself or your child?
So you have your professional practice, you have your artistic practice, and you're a single mom and you're parenting. So what can you say about figuring out that work-life balance?
Oh, man. Is there ever a work-life balance? I feel like to do anything well, you have to really do one thing. So I definitely feel like a lot of times I'm not a good mom. I'm not a good artist. I'm not a good business owner because I'm split in so many directions all the time. And I think we're all just trying to do our best. I think work-life balance is, I think it's what everyone's trying to find. I don't know who has it. I'd love to talk to someone who's got it all figured out, but I don't know that anybody does. Maybe on Monday I do. Maybe on Monday I've got a perfect work-life balance. But then Tuesday rolls around and it's all out the window. There's laundry piled up and the dog needs the haircut, whatever. I don't know how you find a work-life balance. I think that it's every day. Every day you wake up and you think, man, I'm going to try my best today. I yelled at my kid yesterday. I don't want to do that today. I think maybe it's constant reflection.
Absolutely. I don't think it's ever static. It is about being able to deal with things in flux, especially as moms, I think, and creatives. So
yeah,
it's always dynamic and in flux. So can you elaborate a little bit more on how your daughter serves as an inspiration for the creative aspect of your studio practice?
I think our children inspire us differently at different stages of their life. When she was smaller, I felt like I was more playful, and I think that encouraged more playfulness in my work. now as she's gotten older, I find myself dealing with the idea of beauty and how girls view beauty and this idea of perfection. And so I think that she is now inspiring my work in that way. And also aging. I'm very aware that I am aging. And as your children age, I think that it just kind of reminds you all the time that I'm getting older, that things are changing. And so, the way that she inspires my work is that it's always a new thing. Whatever phase she's going through makes me think, oh, I need to say something about this in my work. The beauty element, how do I show that in my work, that beauty is not one form? Beauty meets all sorts of different forms. And how do I teach that to my daughter, who now looks at me? We're not built the same, my daughter and I. She looks at me and wants to know, when am I going to look like my mom? And that's a hard thing as a mom. We're dealing with body issues and girls that are comparing themselves to other girls. And, why am I not good enough? So I think that, the answer to that would be that it's always a different kind of inspiration. And that's exciting to me. It's also very sad because, you see your kid go through these different stages. And, I'm almost sad when the playful stage is gone and now we're moving into another stage. And I can kind of see that throughout my work, how it kind of changes and it relates to different stages of my daughter's life.
Yeah, so the parenting really informs, and what stage you're in really informs your practice then. But it sounds like it actually deepens your practice, and the topics that you address.
I think that once you become a mother, it changes you fundamentally. You can't ever go back to not being a mother. Even if you, God forbid, were to lose a child, I think that your mindset changes. And I think that, not to disparage anyone who doesn't have children, I think it's awesome if you decide not to have kids. You have a lot more money and a lot more time. But, once you become a mother, you're responsible for this person. You're responsible for every part of their life. Being a mother is different than anything else. I think every mother is creative. Even if every mother doesn't consider themselves an artist, we have to be creative as mothers. You're constantly having to figure out ways to solve problems. You have this person that has a growing brain. It's like having a criminal living in your house that's constantly trying to breach your security system. You have to find new ways to do old things. So I think creativity is inherent in mothering. You're always, from the moment you have that child, it's like you put this person out in the world. You don't own them. You're not solely responsible for their actions, but it's your job to teach them and to guide them through every part of their life, and that never stops.
So in terms of role models, then, role models as a mother, but also role models as an artist mother, when you were at SCAD then, Savannah College of Art and Design, do you remember having artist mothers as role models?
No. I wasn't, until I became a mother, I really wasn't aware of how hard it is. Again, I don't think that you understand what it's like to be a mom until you become one. It's like that day that you give birth and they send you home with this child. It's like, really? Are you sure you want to send this baby home with me? I don't know what I'm doing. When I was at SCAD, my focus was on being the best artist I could be and developing my style and my voice and how to develop film in the darkroom. There's a lot of technical stuff that goes into that. So there wasn't an artist mother per se while I was in school, but my grandmother has always been a role model to me. She was just the most amazing person. She was my first magic. I think my grandma was always magic. She did all sorts of magical things with me when I was a child. And, I'm sorry, hormones.
It's great. It's great to have someone like that in your life that you can talk about.
She was amazing. And she was my muse, too. She would let me photograph her. As she got older, I started a series that I called my Master Portrait Series. My daughter was 5, and my grandma was in her late 80s. And I've always been inspired by the 17th century Dutch artists, the painters, the Vermeer. These, again, they're paintings that look like photographs. And those, I just loved that style. It was so beautiful to me, the light and the dark and the drama and the textures and the emotion. So when my daughter was 5 and my grandma was in her 80s, I started this series where I was creating these Rembrandt-style portraits. And I called my grandma and I was like, hey, I have this new series that I'm doing. I really want to photograph you. And she says, oh, no, Adrienne, my wrinkles, I look so old. You don't want a portrait of me. And, this is 10 years ago. So, now I'm really aware of my wrinkles and I see them popping up. But, I told my grandma, this is part of what's beautiful about you. I love your wrinkles. Now that I'm getting older, I get her perspective on that. But, I wanted to do this beautiful portrait of her and photograph her in this artistic style. My grandfather hated the portrait, by the way. He thought it didn't look anything like her. He loved her glamour shot. That, he liked that picture of her. But this, to me, was a way of bringing her into my art and making her part of my world, even if she wasn't an artist, and even if we had different ideas on independence as women. She loved being a wife and mother to my grandfather. That was not my goal in life, was not to be a wife and a mother. It was to, be a good influence on the world around me. And then after becoming a mother, it changed everything. So, to go back to the role model idea, even now I don't look for people specifically as a mother, as a role model. I just look at people that I think are good people, that are doing the right thing and that are teaching the younger generation how to be good people and hold themselves accountable.
Was there ever a time when motherhood was a challenge to your art practice? Or more specifically, was there ever a time when the world's expectations for motherhood posed a challenge to you, especially as a single mom?
That is a complicated question. Yes, every single day. It's, again, that idea of perfection. You're never going to live up to the expectations that you set for yourself in being a mom. You want to be the best mom you can possibly be, but you're always falling short of that. Mothering is a constant challenge, especially as a single mom. And, I'm a single mom in that I am a single mom. There is no real father figure in my daughter's life. Even though I got divorced when my daughter was young and her daughter hasn't been a steady figure, I have girlfriends that, even though they're married, they still function like single moms. It's really interesting to me how, even though we're in different situations, that a lot of us are still going through the same kind of challenges. I think that no matter what stage of mothering, no matter what situation you're in as a mom, I think there's always going to be a different kind of challenge that you're trying to solve. And to find that work-life balance as a mother and to meet expectations, I think you have to wake up every day and just try to do your best.
So you've always had your business and your studio practice then all throughout being a mother then. Any memories about, balancing that or the challenges of, did you bring Emmeline to your studio or that kind of thing?
When she was small, they have those like Baby Bjorn I would wear her. I remember sitting at the computer and editing with her on me. And then I built in my back bedroom where I would edit. I created, like, as she got older and became more mobile, I would make different things. So it was like every few months I was like rearranging the bedroom to make it safe for her where I could work and have her with me. And there were photo shoots that I would take her on. Like, I remember one day, she wasn't walking yet, but I had her in a stroller and I took her to a photo shoot with me and she hung out in the stroller while I did my thing. Most of my clients are mothers. That's kind of my number one client is a mom. And there are times when, like even recently, I had a scheduled photo shoot. I was setting up everything. I was on scene, and my daughter had a she was having trouble breathing, and I needed to take her to the emergency room. And I called my client. My client was already en route to the shoot. And it's this weird balance of, I have this feeling in my stomach like, oh, I have to call my client and cancel. But you're a mom first, and they always understand. My client's response to me was, why are you on the phone with me? Your daughter needs to go to the emergency room. We'll pick this up later. Text me and let me know how she is. So I feel really fortunate that I'm able to do my art and be a mom. And did mother or photographer come first? Well, photographer came first. And maybe photographer taught me how to be a better mother. Being a mother definitely taught me how to be a better photographer. But I've been really lucky having my own business. When things like COVID happened, I didn't have anybody to fire me. I didn't have a job that was, work was harder to get, but I know how to work for myself. So, I just think the challenges are different.
Yeah, so there never really was a demarcation between, Adrienne Maples, photographer, Adrienne Maples, mother, and just it was all combined together and you made it work then.
That sounds great. Yeah, I made it work. Yeah, when I identify myself, I identify as a photographer. That's really the first thing I think about myself is that I'm a photographer. I had an interview that I did some years ago, and the tagline was mother photographer, and then something else. And I thought, mother photographer, that's weird. Why did mother come first? Photographer came first, maybe because being a mother is a more important job. But I don't know, it's just such a strange thing. I don't identify myself as one or the other. It's like all of the above.
Right. So what does it mean to you, or why were you interested in participating in this project, Mother and?
Well, I think community is really important because we live on these screens and we have all these conversations that happen in the virtual world. It's really important to connect with other people in real time. I recently joined a couple of boards. I'm one of the co-vice presidents of the Kansas City Artists Coalition here in town. And connecting with other artists, being responsible for putting artwork together and moving this organization forward is something I'm really passionate about. As my daughter has gotten older, I have a little more freedom. She's 14 now. I can leave her alone. It's amazing. It's kind of funny. I don't know what I did before. Obviously, I put her in a stroller and took her to photo shoots with me. But now that I can leave her alone and she can fend for herself, it gives me some more freedom to tap back into my artistic roots, to be more involved in the community. And when I was approached for this project, I was excited, to be part of something, also to be able to connect with other mothers who are all different kinds of artists was exciting to me. And then also thinking about how this could steer my ideas as a board member and the direction that the Artists Coalition is going. I think that every time you can put yourself out there as an artist and connect with other artists, it helps you grow. It helps you build on your own ideas. If you live in this silo by yourself or in the echo chamber of social media, you're never getting the real feedback. It's all curated to your algorithm, or people are telling you what they want you to hear, or they're being super mean. It's one or the other. It's not necessarily true. So being part of a community, being part of a project that's, highlighting artists as mothers, I think is really amazing. And I think we need to connect more as mothers. I think that we need to realize that we all are similar, that we all sometimes feel like a single mom. And how can we build each other up? How can we teach each other and grow together and not be in competition with one another?
I'm so glad you said that. I mean, that's a really important part of the project is community building and supporting, I think, each other as artist mothers. So, yeah, I'm so excited that you're part of the project, and I can't wait to collaborate with you more moving forward.
Well, thank you for including me. I'm so thrilled.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
This podcast was produced by Cleo Scroll Productions, with Kara Heitz as the director and Emily Milner as the audio engineer. Music is by Brooke Tooley and the Moon Travelers. The Mother and project team includes Eleanor Lim Midyet, project manager and co-curator, Courtney Wasson, co-curator, Laura Berman, senior consultant, Stephanie Leedy-Voulkos Art Center owner and mother of the Crossroads, Erin Woodworth, Leedy-Voulkos Gallery Manager, and Debbie Barrett-Jones, Leedy-Voulkos Gallery Assistant. An extra thank you to the Kansas City Artists Coalition, Distribution by Air Company, and Hotel Indigo for their support. Don't forget to listen to the other episodes of the Mother and podcast, and also remember to check out the Mother and exhibition, which runs from September 5th to November 21st, 2025 at the Leedy-Voulkos Art Center in Kansas City, Missouri. More information can be found on their website at www.leedy-voulkos.com. That's www.leedy-voulkos.com. Thanks for listening.